I learned very quickly that the vital force, no matter how down and out they are, it will sort out what it needs.
We were introduced by our mutual friend, the beautiful Ambika Waters, and she has spoken so highly of you. And she said, Yan is the homeopath that I go to, and she can heal things that nobody else can heal.
Chords were amazing because the vital force got to sort out what it needed, when it needed, and I found that it sustained the effect. So, we just kept the chords going, and you could put it on the skin, you could put it on the lips, the tongue, it didn't matter. So now when I have complex cases there where there's a lot of things garbled and you got to clear out a lot of stuff with regular, people walking on their two legs and, going to work and highly functioning, I still now find that the chords that I put in formulas work really well because I'm confident now that the vital force, when it's complex cases, will sort itself out.
You wrote something interesting here. A couple of cases in my approach when presented with all my cases, but especially helpful in catastrophic situations, the micro expression of the client. What do you mean?
I found the micro expression of a person often was...
Hello, homies, and welcome back to Homeopathy Hangout. I'm smiling ear to ear because I'm so excited about finally getting to hang out with our lovely guest today, Yan Yamamoto. And you are going to have to say the second part of your surname, please, Yan, because I'm not...
Sure. Skowron Wadfell.
Wow.
But thank you.
Where is that
Thank you.
from?
Well, my father's family was all from Poland.
Ah,
My mom is Yamamoto, so I
okay.
took both names. He was
Oh,
from Japan, born in Kobe and grew up in Kyoto. And then Wadfel is my spouse from Morocco.
wow. You just covered your global, cover all the bases. I love that.
Right.
Oh, oh,
So,
dear Jan.
right,
I
Jan
just, I
is
just want
my
to,
nickname.
yeah, I think was it Diane as your was that your given name? Yeah,
Yes,
I love
yes.
Jan. We were introduced by our mutual friend, the beautiful Ambika Waters, and she has spoken so highly of you. And she said, Jan is the homeopath that I go to, and she can heal things that nobody else can heal. And
Oh
it's just,
boy.
it's a big one. It's just such a privilege to get to hang out with you. And I'm looking forward to just seeing where our conversations go today. So I just want to say welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your generosity in having me. I know Ambika loves you, as I
Oh,
was mentioning, she adores you. And so it's a big honor that I'm one of your guests.
oh.
So thank you.
It's such a pleasure. I just thought, do you know what? I am going to. I just had my friends,
Yes.
I just had to pop in my head. I have this friend who her brother is a beekeeper and she makes these candles from the beautiful
Oh,
beeswax from his farm. And I've just had a thought that I'm
oh.
going to light a little candle while we're chatting. How about that? Light a little candle for Ambika to bring her energy into our conversation
Oh,
here because I know that she would love to be part of this. So,
yes.
let's
Thank you.
have a
I
little
love
chat.
that.
Yeah. And these smell so divine as well. So tell us about your
They're
journey, Jan, because this is
beautiful.
always what we do on this podcast is, how did you discover homeopathy and swing all the way back to your pharmacy, by the way, because that I don't even know what that thing is that you did. So you're gonna have to talk about what that is and just tell us your whole history.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Wow. Well, thank you. So, well, as a kid, I was always just into nature, curiosity. And, I found a pharmacy just because I was reading in high school. I didn't have a mentor, but I thought, well, that's kind of cool. You kind of got the librarian of drugs, you know? And so I went ahead and I applied to pharmacy school. I was looking for a job and I was applying for a different job while at school. And the person who was supposed to interview me was not there, but he was this big professor. And then out pops this other man from an office and says, well, you can work for me. Then I thought, oh my, who is this? Oh my gosh, who is this, kind of weirdo? It's like, well, that's okay. I'm like interviewing for something else. Well, it turns out, I mean, he was insistent and just it was one of those serendipitous moments because he was a professor of pharmacognosy, which is finding medicinal uses from plants.
Oh, is that what it is?
And
Okay.
so, yeah, and it's the study of plant medicine, but which goes into the allopathic world. And so I had a big background in that in school, and I worked for this professor and his PhD students. I was just an undergrad preparing plants. We would get boxes from all over the world, nuts, bark, leaves, dried leaves. And so I would take the raw material and break it down and prepare it for the graduate students. And they were looking for medicines that from nature for cancer or natural insecticides. One became on the market from that school. But I began to delve into something very offbeat. Here I was amidst all this plant material, and I just really started to reflect. And then I thought, wow, this is very powerful. So I started to undercover for decades study about plants and herbs and herbology, and really loved it. And then I started to help people. I blended teas for people going through like treatments for cancer and things. And I thought I could play with some of these interactions. They would always say, don't mix. But then I thought, wait a minute here. I could actually enhance this medication so they take less and it works longer and it will help nausea or something. And then what happened over time is I started to recommend natural products in my internships, my jobs, and I suddenly caught myself realizing, I think, kind of looking over my shoulder, wow, I think I'm just on the verge, I could get fired because all I'm doing is recommending natural things, you know, at the retail drugstores. And I thought, okay, I have got to make a commitment. I've got to do
Yeah.
some formal studies. So I thought of homeopathy, I thought of Chinese medicines, and I came across Ambika's book, The Color and Sound Remedies, as I was perusing the library in Los Angeles.
Oh,
And I thought, oh, what is this? What is this? Color, sound, I didn't quite understand it. And so I kept reading it. And I thought,
I was just looking for my
okay, I'm
copy.
going to
I've got it
research
here.
what
I've got
is
it here
this?
somewhere.
Oh,
I've
right.
got her
Yes,
books like sprinkled
her,
all over the place, but I can't find it like right now.
right?
But yeah, they're so beautiful.
They are. And I was just really fascinated. And so then I thought, what is homeopathy? I started researching and I went to a Qigong like kind of conference talking to people who do Chinese medicine. I said, I'm thinking about either. And they said, well, homeopathy is pretty deep. I don't know, but it just attracted me. And then I went and found a practitioner. I got into my own treatment, and then from there, I just applied and made the commitment, went to school, and I loved it. The world opened up, and I thought, wow, this is really what I have. I can't believe this exists. And it's just in my, like love of nature. And I was really blown away. And so a lot of it was just many events of serendipity that I didn't plan but came my way, including the professor who popped out on his lunch break to say, well, you could just work for me. I'm thinking, what? No, no, but, followed and did and kind of was stepping into it with the unknown. And then it just kind of led me down to where the path. So I'm very grateful. And it was just those odd little inklings that I said, okay, I guess.
That's beautiful because you've done so many other interesting things as well. I think you said you do crystal healing as well. You did work with HIV and you've been to Africa to work with Camilla and Jeremy. And I mean, just tell us about all of it. I just want to hear all the stories.
Yes. Well, the crystal work, that was, I think, the beginning of my opening. Yeah, right. So I love it. Everything like I see and feel in the background is like, oh, yes, okay, the affinity.
I actually have to show you this cool one. It looks like an eyeball. I really like that one.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
I
it's
love,
cool,
yeah, it
hey?
does look like
Yeah.
that's Gorgeous. So my crystal work was my first wings that I was spreading my wings. Again, I was perusing the Los Angeles Public Library. I came across a crystal book,
It sounds like a
but
dangerous
it
place for
was
you to hang out.
right, right. So it was my mom was passing. She was ill and she was passing and then passed. And it was my last parent who passed on. And so I was really kind of delving into a lot of things. I was doing daredevil stuff. I wanted to feel what it felt like, but not to die, but to be on the edge. And then I started looking at different things. And so I found Katrina Raphael's book on crystals. And I said, well, I wonder if she teaches. And my mom had passed. And I looked around and I said, well, I found that she did have a school in Hawaii, Katrina. And so I said, well, here we are, me and my two siblings. We don't have any more parents on this planet, although they're around us. And there's no crystal police out there. And it's like, I don't really need approval, And I thought, I have really no idea what I'm stepping into, but I'm going to sign up. And I did. And I took all of her studies from the beginning all the way through the advanced work. It was about 2.5, almost 3 years. And we had cases. And that's when I really started to learn about subtle energies. I did a lot of inner work. And it was pretty rigorous. We had to do certain yoga, different inner work, besides learning about the stones. It was amazing. And so I learned the ancient art of laying on stones for people, and it helped the intuitive, wake up even more. And I loved it. And I didn't know in some ways it was homeopathic because when I applied to school for homeopathy, they had asked, me about, well, what do you do when you choose the crystals? And they're part of the mineral kingdom. And so I said, well, I don't really know. I do the process, but then I said, I just sort of feel and scan and I feel what's missing. I feel what's lacking or missing. And I go for the stones. And then, I learned later that ties into the mineral kingdom in many ways, and I didn't know it. So I was probably in that field, it was just it was a segue in, but I loved it. And I loved when I saw that there's gemstone remedies in homeopathy, I was blown
That
away.
was my
And I
next
thought, well,
question. Like, do you?
this is
Yeah.
it for me. Forget Chinese medicine. No, I'm kidding, but for me, it was like the homeopathic college and path. And I thought, this is it. Like, I cannot believe this. This is too good to be true,
Mm.
type of things. And I still apply like the crystal knowledge, the chakra, the different auric and etheric bodies. I still apply all those things to what I do now. And I love the beauty. I just love the beauty of it all, the amazing qualities of the divine that they bring in, and so it still stays with me. So that was my crystal journey, which continues, and it's, a lot more people are doing it. It's grown. I love it. And I love applying it in formulas that I make. Yeah, but that was my real first deepening of inner work
Mm.
and, of learning of something that was so much bigger and ancient, the planet, the whole thing was, yeah,
Mm.
amazing.
And the lesson is, if you don't want to have a lifetime of learning, stay away from the library.
Right. Right. It was a dangerous
Yeah,
place.
you want to play it safe. So how do you even like approach a case? Because you can go from so many different angles, like with your wide variety of training that you've done. Like if somebody comes to you, where do you start?
That's a good question. Because sometimes I say, where do I start?
Yeah, I think we all say that sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, no, thank you for that. Yes. It depends on the case, but I pull from all those experiences. I really do. And let me see. I think each person in each case is so different, depends on the severity, and everything like that. And I used to be very conflicted when I was training, that I was trained first as a pharmacist. I had to really go through that acceptance process. And what do I do with this information? I don't want to be conflicted. I don't want to be, a hater, or anything. But then I started to turn things on their ear a little bit. I started to look at what is this doing? And even in homeopathic college, we learned about coercion of the vital force. And, so I started to spin and look at medication differently. And then I think it just depends. I pull from everything. And I also still like to, if it's a very severe case and they need integrative work, a lot of allopathy. I like to see how I can enhance and navigate and relieve the person and bring them out eventually. But I love it from all angles. And I think it just depends what comes my way and what, is happening and how severe. Yeah. And sometimes it's to my advantage, and then I can help the families,
What
if
do you
it's, yeah.
You wrote something interesting here. A couple of cases in my approach when presented with all my cases, but especially helpful in catastrophic situations, the micro expression of the client. What do you mean?
Oh, right. Yes. That's something I just sort of like kind of came up with, in the sense of when I was really thinking about how to prepare for my class to share with people. It's like, what am I talking about here? So as practitioners, we are very good at looking at, typology, all the different subtle things, little things in gestures and all that kind of stuff. And so then I found the micro expression of a person often was when there was little hope, and the family or the client was given a prognosis of little hope, or it was very catastrophic, or the client could not communicate for themselves. And so then I started, and they were given information, especially in very catastrophic, where the family was told to prepare for basically, funeral services or whatever. And then the micro expressions to me can be little groans, little grunts, but it can, little twitches, but it can also be, well, what is, if there's no kind of even verbal and they're not awake in the sense of awake? Well, the micro expression can be, what is the blood pressure doing? When the blood pressure is spiking and going up and down, or why is this in so many period of time becoming unstable? What is this body trying to communicate? What are they trying to do? And so then when I started to really tune in, and that's my other faculties coming in too, besides like, okay, yes, I understand the medical, I'm not a doctor, but I understand. But there's something more beyond this. This person is trying to climb out from something that's they're buried so far under. They're trying their best to climb out the best they can. And maybe the only way they can is this something that's lots of activity dynamic inside. We can't see it on the outside, but maybe the blood pressure is doing something wonky when they're on controlled with medication and remedies or whatever it is, the situation. But what is all this? What is this? Wait a minute here. Are you sure that this is the end? And so those to me are like micro expressions of the person being able to do their best when they're completely bombarded, to try to show something that they're trying to do in their only way, even if it's automatic and autonomic in the body,
Yeah.
but something is happening to trigger that instability, besides like the very obvious in the textbook definitions
You're
and
so
things like
right.
that.
Like the body is always trying to talk to us, always.
Right.
And I never thought about it in that way, but you're right. I mean, body's always going to try to express in some way. I mean, is this something that you're teaching in your course, or like what would you do with these? You are. Well, maybe let's
Yeah.
backtrack because you've got the, okay. You've got this course, so maybe give us like the overarching, like when the course is, what it's called, what you're going to be teaching, and then we'll just dive into all the little bits of what people can learn from it. Can we do that?
Oh, yes, sure.
Is
Thank
that all
you.
right? So I don't know if I'm putting the horse in front of the car or the
Yes.
cart in
Oh,
front of the horse,
yeah.
but I just think maybe if we tell people that they can actually learn, because otherwise
Right.
they're going to be listening to you go, where do I learn this? Where do I learn this? So if we just say, hey, you can learn this stuff from Jan, this is the course, this is where you sign up, and then this is the stuff that you're going to learn. Because I really want to dive into all of this. If I maybe give our listeners more context, then that might help.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Well, so my course is basically I'm just sharing my experience of cases that came my way that are catastrophic and how I got through them when there was completely expected to be no hope. And so that's basically my class. I can't remember the title again, something like that, but sharing my experience. It's going to be live. It's on November 8th and it's graciously hosted through Ambika Waters on her
Oh,
website.
so
And so some of
lifeenergymedicine.com.
her, yes, lifeenergymedicine.com. And so she is graciously hosting some of her students who are beginning, like me, to offer classes and teachings. So, yes, it'll be live. I will share that and I'll go into the cases, a couple of cases that were pretty juicy. One was a client who was deemed brain dead, and then another one with brain cancer. And I have a few others I'll put in there too, time permitting. So, yes, and it was just kind of how I had to quickly figure out when they told a family member, basically prepare for a funeral, or if this client is going to stay on, that they're going to be completely brain dead and hooked up to a machine for the rest of their life. But then in that first 48 to 72 hours, after they said that, I began to not give the family member any false hope, but I began to like really delve in and understand that, okay, wait a second here. Some of these moans, some of these movements, some of these noises, some of this fighting the breathing tube is not just sort of random and is not just reflexive either, but this person's really trying his best with all of his might to swim out of this situation. And then when I started, and I don't know quite how that came, but it just sort of was divine guidance also that came in my saying, asking, for help, please, how do I help the situation besides normally what we might triage typically, but then really going further. Then I started to understand these kind of what I call micro expressions. The person who was deemed brain dead also had a micro expression where he had a reaction to a provider in neurology. And then the family member would tell me, I'd watch the trends with blood pressure and pulse and all kinds of stuff. And it was with that provider. And I realized that this person who they're saying is brain dead is actually able to discern. They are discerning preference. They're discerning trust or affinity for, because they didn't do it with other providers. And then 4 months later, when the client was out in rehab, but also came way far along and was able to talk to me and reflect back, I had all the memories of that time, all of them, knew everything from the time they were saying that he was brain dead. And I asked about that doctor provider, and he had the same reaction that, in a nutshell, basically saying that, yeah, he kind of, he's a piece of work, like he's something else. But it was this reaction that he wasn't, didn't, maybe it was the bedside manner or whatever it was, but the relationship and the affinity for that provider and him were not, a good match, although he's a great doctor. But, I realized that, okay, wait a second here. This person is discerning. he's trying to communicate the best he can, and it's discernment also. So he's got a higher functioning going on. And then I just kept, just honing it, when you're in the situation, you're thrown in, you learn quickly, and then you start to go, not renegade, but you're out there, you're learning, but it's so intense. And then your skills become, your antennas start to go in places that they're needed. Your senses become honed again. And so, yeah, so those kind of things with micro expression are things I'm going to share in the class.
Wow. Is that
Yeah,
something that you would then like repertorize, or is there like, are you teaching them how to discern these types of things, or are you teaching them how they would, because that many of us would kind of treat those types of cases. So how would we like use that?
yeah, yeah. I still stuck with like, well, I don't want to say regular repertorization, but I also started to understand, okay, this is partly an emotional reaction, perhaps. The micro expression is not just something that's physical, something that's like dynamic, just with reflexes of the vessels at this point. There's also an attachment there, there's an intelligence. And so I would go back and I would retreat and retreat, maybe shock. I would repeat different remedy sequences. And when we did that, we're clearing like we normally would clear shock, clear anger, suppressed anger, clearing fear. And I know it's all related, and a lot of the remedies will cross over. But then I started bringing in other remedies in subtle ways that was like, okay, let's help ground the person. And then the other part of I had to discern, I had to look at the medications. Is this influenced by the medication side effect? Is this the medicine speaking that's overriding the vital force and the client? Or is it really these micro expressions? And then I would only find out when we changed remedies. And oftentimes it was very rarely the medication, but we were working uphill over that. But often it was connected to an awareness that couldn't be expressed and a discernment of the person, but just on a level that where they were very far away, so to speak. So I mean, I'm just sharing what I've experienced, and you know what I
Beautiful.
mean. But
Beautiful.
but I found that to be true,
Mm.
over these cases and stuff.
I've never heard anyone talk about this, and it's really great to hear you say this because it just makes so much sense. These little micro expressions, and that they are, because I believe in every fiber of my being that our vital force is highly intelligent and it's always working in our best interest. And so,
Yes.
and I mean, we deal with miracles and homeopathy all the time and we see incredible things happen. And I just haven't heard anyone talk about these micro expressions and how we, are interpreting this. It's great that we're talking about this because I think if we want to get homeopathy into the mainstream, and Dr. Farrokh Master has actually said this in the podcast interview, you go into the area which the medical profession has given up hope on. So you go into like terminal cancer or you go into palliative care because the medical profession's got nothing to offer there. Then we go in there as homeopaths and we do our thing because the medical profession figures, well, we can't do any worse. And so,
Right.
actually, learning these types of skills and learning from somebody that, you can, not always, obviously, and we're never saying that we will bring everyone back from the brink of death, but,
Right.
if that vital force is still expressing itself that, yes, I don't want to go, I want to hang in there, then why wouldn't we try and help? And learning these skills are really powerful.
Right.
Are
And I
you,
think you can bring it forward to like just the regular person who's living their life.
yeah,
They're on medication and they might be just accepting, okay, this is as good as it's going to get,
yeah,
and I'm dealing with it. And again, the doctor or the allopathic world is done. There's no more
mm,
they can do.
mm,
And I think the micro expressions can also go forward in those cases too, because it's
mm,
like, okay, what's going on here? What's really going on here?
mm,
So I think it could carry through, and you're right
mm,
with what Dr. Master said. It's
mm.
true. you know?
I mean, even cases, I'm just thinking of like, quadriplegics or like, people who are in a vegetative type state that it's not like they can tell us the full extent of what it is that they're experiencing, but tuning into these micro expressions, I really love the idea of that. Do you find that there are particular remedies or particular potencies that you tend to prescribe? Because I'm guessing were you physically there with that person in hospital to observe them, or because you'd need to observe the person for quite a while to start getting some patterns. Like,
Yeah.
firstly, how do you handle a case like that? And secondly, are there particular potencies or remedies? Because, we get taught, like, if the vital force is weak, you'd probably start with a lower potency, or, like, how do you kind of navigate
Yeah.
that? And I know potency is always like,
Right.
when people ask, what potency did you use? It's such a like, oh, well, how long is a piece of string quite type question. But I'm asking it anyway, because I know that's what the listeners are wanting to know.
Right. So for the very catastrophic particular case where the client was deemed brain dead, I was basically almost on the phone every hour to 2 hours. I would be up from, it was crazy. I would be up from, 6, 7 in the morning, going till 10. In those cases, when they're in very, very highly acute situations, everything changes dynamically very quickly, just as quickly as they change medications and IV drips. The vital force is keeping up in dynamics so fast, so fast. So what I learned, and yes, I discovered other remedies, which I'll share in the class too, but I learned that given the situation, I almost had to become like, okay, we've got to titrate this in a way that's going to be going with the changes that are so fast in the hospital. They slowed down in the rehab unit, but so fast that I started using chords, potency chords. And I was taught that, right, with the typical classical way of choosing potencies. And then one thing, though, that I was taught was that, if there's going to be an affinity for a remedy for a person, and you only have 6C on hand or 1M on hand, and if there's an affinity, they're going to respond. You'll get a response. And that was more on a constitutional kind of teaching that, give what you got until you can get what the potency you want if you're in a bind, But I found that in these cases where it's very intense and the vital force is really very dynamic and moving very fast pace, that I found chords worked. So, and I learned very quickly that the vital force, no matter how down and out they are, it will sort out what it needs. So I did chords from 6C to 12 to 30 to 200 in one chord in water, and the vital force would sort it out. They never had an aggravation. Sometimes I didn't usually put in 1M, I would give those single. And then the higher potencies, 10M or 50M of very high acutes, I would give it single. But the chords were amazing because the vital force got to sort out what it needed, when it needed. And I found that it sustained the effect. So, we just kept the chords going, and you could put it on the skin, you could put it on the lips, the tongue, it didn't matter. So now when I have complex cases there where there's a lot of things garbled and you got to clear out a lot of stuff with regular, people walking on their two legs and, going to work and highly functioning. I still now find that the chords that I put in formulas work really well because I'm confident now that the vital force, when it's complex cases, will sort itself out. It
Hmm.
takes what it needs. And I don't do it on everyone, but I found that, okay, I can rely on this. And it
Wow.
was through that extreme situation
Mm.
that taught me about that. And also, I found that then I could use that and apply that in regular people with just regular acutes.
Mm.
Okay, let's do a chord, for just an acute, a regular acute, you know. And so that became very useful that I discovered. I will teach about some of the remedies that came in handy for me and that now I've extended their use and practice more broadly. One in particular that I'll talk in the class about, but I'll share others that were nice additions to, what we may normally go to, but I used to use Madeline Evans
Mm.
Proving's The Pink Rose. I used to use that for a lot of bone issues, osteo issues, things with the spine. But
Wow.
then I found that it really helps with any issues with the brain and the nervous system. Yeah, and also when there's also a lot of karmic things too that come with that, and then person may have issues with brain, spinal cord, or nervous system, and lots of karmic things. But I've been using the Madeline Evans Pink Rose quite a bit in high potency, and that has been amazing. So now, if I have a case where there's things with the nervous system, things with the brain, traumas, especially childhood, and some karmic, but also there's this sense of whole rose family.
Mm.
I'll get to that in a second, but I always
I
think of,
love that.
okay,
I'm
rose.
working with the rose at the moment as well. It's actually a blend
Ah,
that Caroline Gaskin made. And actually, I was going to say to you, it's funny because both of us have got this. It's actually my skirt color. So
I
we
was
actually
debating on this color today.
we actually have both had the same idea today. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, there's
and
lots to learn
find
from
the
the
pink
rose.
rose, yes.
Mm.
So that's really powerful.
It's-
And yeah, but I'll share others that I put in my formulas from some of these cases. And one thing about the pink rose that I love, I have a family I take care of, and there is a Madonna like quality, a Marian quality to the family. And one of the family members has a very high affinity for apple tree. And I
Mm.
thought, well, let me look at almond, and all that's in the
Mm.
Rosaceae family. One family member, clearly pink rose, was one of her intercurrents that helped her
Wow.
bridge and get, move on in different ways, open up. But I find that quality, that's more the esoteric, when you tap in and see that quality in your clients. I also think of that pink rose remedy.
Mm. I'm gonna have to go read this up. This is like I am in a constant conundrum with this podcast because in a constant state of FOMO because I keep learning about new remedies, new methodologies, new everything, and I just want to do it all.
I think you can, and I think you are, but I don't. You definitely can do it all.
No, I can't. I really can't. Oh. And talk to me about soul constitutions. What on earth do you mean about that? You've written here,
Oh.
evolution, soul constitutions. I mean, I'm actually too scared to ask this question. I don't know if I want to know. You tell our listeners. I'm just going to close my ears while you're talking about this.
I'm just, these are my creations. I'm sort of whipping up, and probably the committee's going, oh my gosh.
No, keep people love it. Keep going, keep going. We've got to explore all
Well,
these boundaries, right? You got to ask the question and we got to go down little rabbit holes and see,
right.
and take what resonates and leave the rest.
Right. So soul constitution to me, what I've noticed, I didn't feel this before. I mean, I learned in the classical way, but I also learned within my training many other ways and possibilities as well. But it wasn't until very recently, and with some of these cases and other ones that followed after that, and also I think it's the time where the new age is here and it's still evolving and still defining, but it's growing. I would take the case, I'd see the constitutional, the lesional care if I needed to do that, and detox or whatever. But then there was something very quiet about the person. So I still do, as I've learned a long time ago, asking, what are your three wishes at the end of my cases? That's the hardest question for everyone to answer. But then as I begin the case, remedies are working. I started to see that a lot of times the main constitution is who the person is showing up to be in the world. But then there is something very deeper inside that voice. Again, it's that voice. And I don't know if it's part of the micro expressions that is not been able to fully speak, but it wants to. And so then I started really tuning in, okay, well, the soul of that person, the soul work of that person, their expression, who do they view themselves and feel themselves as in showing up in this world, in this lifetime, or just this, the world. And the soul was that thing behind everything else. And so I started to bring that in. And I took a chance and I started to bring it in on different remedies that was like, this is your soul expression. I learned a little bit about that when I studied essential oils with Dr. Burkowski. So
Of
he
course, you've done
does a
essential
lot of
oils too.
soul work and soul retrieval. And then
Wow.
also, when I did my shamanic journey work a long time ago after my mom passed, in a very safe environment with a lady, psychology, and she did some shamanic practices too. It was really just going inward and a lot of inner work and artwork and stuff. But, so it's those things that come out in like the artist's work. It's the things that come out of that are automatic. And I started to just kind of, as I get to know my clients more, then I can go further and I see, okay, the soul wants to talk, the soul wants to speak. And so oftentimes there's another remedy, and that just kind of helps bring it out, helps them blossom, and then it carries forth the other remedies, is what I've noticed. But I think it's also this age too, and how things are changing on the planet, that wants to be heard. And so
Yeah.
I don't know if that sounds like, kind of crazy, but I kind of coined it that because they thought, well, this is your soul expression. And for example, I have a client, beautiful person, who it was very strongly had an affinity and knows that they had another, lifetimes as a Native American, and that was still there. And parts of that life and that soul expression were not healed. And so we were doing the work of that person, but then also when I brought in what I felt was her soul remedy that healed the past in a way that was not just the generational past, but it was the past of what this person really felt that they had a lifetime as a Native American in another lifetime. And
Mm.
that was still carried through the person. And I saw that overlap. And so then I began to do that and give remedies for that, that kind of healed that carryover that was non generational, but another life, another lifetime, or another affinity. And I meet people all the time, like, even Ambika is my Japanese sister in another life.
Oh.
But, we all have these affinities and things, and sometimes it's stronger, sometimes just an attraction, but it was very strong for somebody. So then I started thinking this might be the soul constitution. And so one of the clients, the one who also had the brain injury, he had some karmic stuff.
Mm.
But yeah, so it's things like that when I started to, and I think the age, changing in the new age, and it's allowing us to express more. It's allowing people to, feel in more.
That really can make a big difference for someone because I know of someone who they always felt very strongly that they were in the Vietnam War and that they, had lost their colleagues there. And so they saw actually a kinesiologist and didn't say anything about feeling this. And the kinesiologist actually picked that up and said that this is what happened. And the person completely resonated with it. And the kinesiologist cleared that. And they said that when they used to walk past like a police station or army or something like that, they would always have, that kind of like energetic resonance there. But then they noticed that they could just walk past these places and there was no more resonance or no more like kind of draw, like the energy wasn't drawing them in. I thought that's so
Yes.
interesting. And sometimes, whether it's real or imagined, if you have a strong affinity in some way that you feel
Right.
that in a past life, whether it's real or imagined or whatever, that you have that energetic resonance that something happened with you that's unhealed, then wherever
Yes.
it comes from, it doesn't really matter. But we have homeopathic remedies that can help with the
That's right.
resonance of that.
Right.
Because I also
It's
see the opposite happen. I see people wanting to heal themselves and, grow and all these beautiful things. And then they'll go to like
Right.
past life regression people and, or maybe a shaman or whatever. And maybe it's not necessarily the safest environment, or maybe it is. But then they'll come and see us in a homeopathic consultation. They'll say, and this is just from clinical experience, is what I've heard clients will say, I went to this transgression past life person and they said that I was sexually abused by my dad or this or that, or
Mm,
like they'll say all these things and then suddenly they have all these issues that they didn't have before. And so there's kind of that side to it as well. It's
yeah.
such it's a tricky one. And we talk a lot about, these days about, I feel like there's an energy collectively of us wanting to heal things that's not ours or that we feel is not ours.
Mm,
And I don't know if it's
mm-hmm.
just maybe, I'm completely aware of the fact that I live in a beautiful echo chamber. I love my echo chamber. Don't get me out of it. But I feel like the people that I'm surrounded by, or the conversations that I'm hearing is that there's a thing at the moment of wanting to clear ancestral trauma or past life things
Oh,
or
right.
things that's not
Yeah.
ours. There's this need of wanting to clear that. And I mean, I think that's a good thing because if there's anything in your life that you feel is holding you back, then if you have something as beautiful and safe as homeopathy, why wouldn't you use it? I don't know. I don't know where I
Right.
was going with
Right.
that. I think it's beautiful that
Yeah.
we've got our
No.
remedies that can help to heal that. I always wonder about like going and digging where you shouldn't be digging or like poking sticks where maybe you don't need to. But then also we do, maybe we do need to. I think it's just whenever
Right.
somebody is going actively to go and unearth things that might not be there, I always wonder how useful is that? Because I don't think everyone in the healing space, especially that's something that's become quite
Right. Yeah.
at the forefront of my mind. Not everyone in the healing space is necessarily doing things with the best intentions. And with social media and everything like that, it's very easy to position yourself in a way that's not actually true. And I've recently been burned in that way.
Yes.
And so that's, I think, was
Oh,
why I'm in this funny space at the moment where it's like, it's great that we're all unearthing these things, but just also be really careful of who you work with and what it is that you're unearthing. I don't know. Have you
right.
got
I
anything that you
do.
can speak into about that? Like, how do we safely
Yeah.
release these things? And what are your thoughts on that, on going and digging where you don't need to dig?
Well, I think that is tricky. I mean, I think when I look at the clients that I feel that I'd like to have a more of a soul constitution, there are things that they just express on their own, and then
So it's things
seeing,
that they express.
okay,
It's not that
where,
you're telling them like this is what's happened to you or this is what's going on.
oh,
You
yeah, no, no. And I don't like to lead. I don't feel that digging up something is healthy or helpful, but I listen to the client. And then what I try to do with, I think for me personally, is that I see, okay, is there a crossover? Not a crossover. Is there a sort of
like a
meeting
resonance.
where this, right, the resonance where that historical trauma or injury, based on what they describe and based on what we can know from history, does that cross over into what's current, and how strong is that? And how much are they looking back at that as, I think, something that really holds them? And it could be holding, if it holds you in a good way, great. But if not, if it's holding them in a way that's like, then brings in a bias into their current life and they're stuck. I kind of look at that like when the paths are crossing through time, but it's, not linear. And so there's this overlap. To me, that's when I feel that overlap. That's when I start
Yeah.
looking at, okay, is there something with that overlap as an intercurrent in that soul constitution? I don't like to lead the clients. I've been taught that's, no, no. But I also don't feel that digging up something is good. I mean, I think that I want the client to express to me, and I think that inadvertently the digging up can happen, but I don't know that that would, serve somebody well. I think that you have to be ready for what you want to be ready for. And if you're curious about something and you want to dig it up yourself and dive a little further and have a conversation, that's fine. And we can look at that and is it affecting whatever's going on? But
Mm.
yeah, I think it's tricky. And I think that we do have to be careful, but I kind of, I look at that overlay, you know, is kind of what I've noticed. And I don't do it with everybody. I do it just in, some cases. And when I have, it's been very beautiful and helpful. And the person then can almost release themselves from sort of what's bringing them a stronger bias and an obstacle, and it frees them more. So then they can go on with life and be themselves. But also, too, when there is strong child and parental conflict, I listen, and I think there is, or strong relational conflict, depending. When I get that inkling, okay, are we looking also at a karmic thing? I don't necessarily feed into the discussion about that necessarily, but sometimes I do, especially if the client wants to talk about it. But then I will, in my mind, in my workup, in my studying, in my perusing, going, if everything else fits. And there's that karmic thing that can fit. Yes, so yeah, I'm careful in that way, and I don't think digging is good where you shouldn't be digging. I mean,
but like you say, like we kind of like accidentally,
yeah,
there's don't do that, but I know the amount of times that I've given a remedy and suddenly that has given somebody an insight or a realization of something that might come. But I guess that's different rather than going to somebody who's telling you this is what happened to you, this is what happened to you.
right,
It's
yeah,
coming from an inner knowing. I always, I keep
yeah,
saying this to my kids and I keep thinking like, in this world of AI and this world of noise with social media and everything that's telling you this is what's missing in your life, this is what you should be doing, this is the next best thing. I think if we
yeah,
just can keep on honing in on our own inner compass and our own inner guidance system
yes.
that really is. So any insights that we come to, if it's coming from a place of inside of us, then, that really is the way to go.
That's where the real strength is,
Yeah.
the truth,
Mm,
the strength, and the knowing, and you stay in touch with
mm,
being able to discern too, I
mm,
think. But right, I agree.
mm.
Yeah, the other part you mentioned, right? If you give something and something emerges, is like, oh, okay, oh, wow, okay, wow,
Wasn't
and
expecting
then you go from there
that.
and keep going.
Exactly right. I was just thinking as you were talking about like the soul constitutions, like I've always thought I'd love to dig more into astrology. And actually, anyone listening, Liz Norman does a great course called Astrology for Homeopaths. Really good.
Oh,
But
nice.
it's something I've often thought because you can kind of like, I guess, find out the soul's journey in a way through the astrology chart. So, like, kind of using that in a way is quite helpful. I mean, we've got so many tools we can use, right? You can kind of really take this any direction you want, which is, I think,
Yeah.
the strength and I don't know, potentially the downfall of homeopathy. I don't think it really is, but it's just, I guess, what makes it just so unique and why I love this podcast, just bringing everyone's different take on things into it because how do you define homeopathy or like how do you
I
it's
know. And it
just so
keeps getting
limitless.
bigger and
Yeah.
bigger the more you go in,
Yeah. It
and,
definitely it can't be contained. That's for sure.
this
That's
is
for sure.
true. Yeah.
Who is this shamanic soul work with Rhonda LaRue? Who is
Oh,
who is that
so
and what's that about?
yeah, she was that was very wonderful, very gentle. So she used to be in Ojai. She has a psychology background, and she also an art background, and she studied different shamanic and meditation techniques. And so she would do a kind of soul work, work for people. So you would sign up and you would go to her property. She used to live on a sacred property in Ojai, and it was a sacred tribal property before. So for me, I wanted to kind of explore more self healing after my mom passed. And so I went, I thought, I found her just like, but it wasn't at the library,
Not at the
but
library
I found
project.
her. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to try this. It was gentle. You stay on her property and you'd stay in this like sort of camper. she was separate in the house, and she'd meet you and you'd do meditation and work and a lot of exploration. It's very clean. She'd feed you, nice diet, everything, and art therapy. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I just knew that I needed to go to a place where I knew nothing about within myself. And I wanted to heal in different ways. And I just, wanted to kind of do some deep work. I didn't even know what deep work really meant, And so I went and I did a 3-day retreat. I thought I did 3 days and it felt like I was gone for 2 months. And, there was no substances or anything. It was just good food, water, no, alcohol, no substances, no nothing, but on her property. And the property was so sacred, I could feel like the trees and I could feel the native spirit. And it was full of owls and full of nature. And you were just in this cocoon. And then you'd be doing your work. And then sometimes all of a sudden, I don't know the time, there'd be a plate of food on, and then you'd keep doing your assigned work and you'd come together, meditate. So I really released a lot of things, sadness, grief, and things during that time. And one of the images that was real powerful for me was that I was doing a visualization meditation. And at first I was seeing her standing before me, laying bricks down to form a road. And then the bricks became faster and faster and faster. And soon I was creating the bricks and I was creating the road and to where I was going. And that always stayed with me. And it was very joyful. And so now sometimes when I describe that to people, I describe that with homeopathy too. I'm with you. I'm walking with you. I'm at your feet and I'm laying down bricks. I'm helping you with a new road. But as you and the remedies, you start to heal, you're going to be the one. First, the remedies are your placeholder, but then you're going to be the one, and the bricks are going to be laying faster, 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 and you're going to be forming your road. It's the same thing. And so I'm the facilitator for you to begin laying these bricks for you this way, this way, this way. Remedies are saying this way, this way. Wow. And then soon your vital force already knows which way to go. And they're like, okay, I'm good, let's, but I needed that at the time to really let go and allow myself freedom, let go of sadness and other things and experience that. And it was very powerful.
Sounds amazing.
And I still appreciate to this day. Yeah. I didn't know again. And I just kind of went blindly, but I was divinely guided and divinely cared for. And it gave me that experience to understand something bigger and to help people now with, a lot with trust, a lot with letting go,
I think it's going to be an amazing course that you're going to be teaching. You've clearly got a wealth of experience. So I'm just on Ambika's website at the moment, lifeenergymedicine.com. And if you click at the top, it says classes 2025. And then you can scroll down and you'll see an image there of Yan, and it says optics and wanderings through challenging case examples. And if you click on that, then you will see a bit of a description of the case, some overview there. There's the dates. So it says here November 8th, 11:30 CT via
Central US time.
Okay, excellent. And and you can just add to cart from there. So it's easy enough to navigate there. So that's good. I'm glad we figured that one out. So I know where people can sign up, which is also good because I was just thinking of when this episode will be released, and we will definitely get it out. I've got you booked in at the moment for the 27th of October. So that'll still give people plenty of time to book in. So that's good. And it's good sometimes if you don't do it like too far in advance, because people go, oh, I'll do it, and then they'll forget. But actually, you're already scheduled for the 27th of October. So this works nicely. Excellent.
This is wonderful. And I'm so grateful.
It was lovely to speak with you, Jan. So, like I said, Ambika told me about these cases that you've been treating that everyone's given up on, and it was just amazing to hear that. But also learning about pharmacognosy, I just did not know that that's a thing. It sounds very cool. I mean, even the pharmacists, I wish they'd, like they like to get down to the pharmacologically active ingredients. I wish they would
Oh,
just
right.
like look at the big picture. Like there's a reason it's a nature with all of its cofactors and components, and just look at things in a more holistic way. But anyway, we need all of it, right? It's all good.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, I've definitely been grateful for, antibiotics, and I've been very grateful for general anesthetic when I've had my appendix removed. So there's very grateful for all of that. And trying to think if I've ever had an opioid. Oh yeah, I had an opioid once when I was 20 and I had pleurisy and I thought I'd broken a rib. It was very painful. I think I just had that once, but I felt very, very woozy. But it
Wow.
was
Yeah.
awful. But we're very grateful that we've got pharmaceuticals as well. But yeah, thank goodness for homeopathy is all I can say.
Thank goodness for homeopathy. That's all I can say, really.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jan. I'm excited for all these people that are going to be learning from you. And thank you for sharing with us this beautiful approach that you have and just sharing with us all these different modalities that you're weaving into. And made me realize I need to go take my kids to the library this week because we've just moved house and we've got a new library now. And I need to go get them some
Be
new library
careful.
cards.
Be careful. Right?
Uh, well, thank you so much and sending you loads and loads of love.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. It's an honor. Thank you.
Bye.